Hi, I'm Lynette and welcome to my channel. Today I am going to be reviewing the new I Am Magic foundation from Juvia's Place. Now, as is typical with all of my reviews, I'm going to talk about the packaging and the price. I'm going to show you a demo of me applying the foundation. I'm going to tell you my experience with this foundation after wearing it for 3 days. And then I'm going to tell you my thoughts and if I would recommend it. Okay, so if any of that sounds of interest to you, then just keep on watching. So as we all know now, Juvia's Place released, just recently they released their first complexion products. They released the foundation and a concealer, and today I will be reviewing the foundation. This is the outer packaging for the foundation, as with all of Juvia's Place's packaging with their with everything, all their packaging. They have the Nubian princesses or queens here on the front, which is always so pretty. It's a nice bright like peachy orange box, so it is definitely going to stand out in your makeup collection. That is the outer packaging, and this is the package that the foundation comes in. It's a squeezy tube, which I do like. You do get 1 fluid ounce of foundation and the price is $20. So now I want to read to you what Juvia's Place says about their foundation. Radiant, long-lasting, creamy, and comfortable. Our Second Skin Creamy Foundation offers a smooth application with a soft, natural, and soft matte finish to give a flawless coverage. A great formula to even out the complexion, refine skin texture, and erase blemishes, maintaining the initial finish throughout the day. Suitable for all skin types, including sensitive and oily skin. And it's free from parabens, oil, and cyclopentasilicane if that's important to you. It has a 24 month shelf life, and it is cruelty free. And Juvia's Place says to apply the product with a wet beauty sponge or synthetic makeup brush with a sweeping and buffing motion all over the face, and it says that it is full coverage. I bought this foundation in the shade Gabon, which is number 300. I have my shades and other foundations listed in the description box below, so in case you want to use me as a reference for what shade you think might work for you. It took me a while to get this foundation because I wanted to wait for it to come to Ulta because I didn't want to play the whole foundation shade guessing game online. So I went on ahead and waited for it to come to Ulta. And there was actually 2 shades that appeared that might work for me. This shade Gabon number 300, which is was a little too dark for me at the time, and then the next shade up, which is Burkina, which is a little lighter. I think that one would have worked for me as well, but they were sold out of that one, so I ended up buying this one thinking that summer was coming. I was going away in another week or 2, and I figured by the time I got back this shade would match me. Well, it doesn't exactly match me still. But more on that a little later. I found that in applying this foundation that the consistency is quite thick. As you'll see in the demo, when you put it on your hand and I turn my hand over, it doesn't move at all. So it's quite thick. But to be so thick, it's surprisingly very creamy, which I guess shouldn't be much of a surprise because this has a lot of silicones in it. The first ingredient is water, the second ingredient is dimethicone, and then it's followed with a host of other cones and dimethicones. So not surprising, I guess, that it does move very well, very easily. It was very easy to move around and blend, despite the fact that it was so thick. It is very creamy. This foundation is full coverage. As you'll see in the demo, I have a lot of blemishes. I have a lot of acne scarring. I have hyperpigmentation, dark under eye circles, you name it, I got it. And this foundation, for the most part, covered it up. I mean, after 1 layer, I could still see a little bit of some of my acne scarring, but for the most part, it covered up everything very well. Covered it up well enough to the point where I didn't feel like I needed to go in with another layer, as I do with all my other foundations. I do wear 2 layers of everything else that I own. This one, I didn't have to do that. I felt like I could wear the 1 layer and then I just go over the little blemishes that you could still faintly see. I went over it with some concealer, which is what I do with all my other foundations anyway, so that didn't bother me at all. I do appreciate that it is full coverage with just 1 layer, and the fact that it is full coverage and again so thick, I was also surprised at how lightweight it feels on my skin. I don't feel like I'm wearing a full face of foundation. It doesn't feel heavy on my skin. I don't feel weighed down wearing it, so that was a nice surprise also. It is a matte foundation. Juvia's Place describes it as soft, natural, and soft matte finish. I don't know how soft I would say it is. It's definitely matte. I wouldn't say it's super matte, but it's definitely matte, and I definitely do feel like it looks a little flat upon initial application. As I wear it throughout the day, it doesn't look as flat to me, but initially it does. This is a foundation that I think would work well for someone with normal skin, because I don't think you would need to powder this foundation down. I powder down everything because I'm quite oily, but I think if you're not as oily, I think you could actually get away with not powdering this, not setting this foundation with powder. Now, I did wear this foundation for 3 days, not consecutively, but for 3 days. The first day I wore it to work. And so when I go to work, I'm finished applying my foundation and all of my makeup at 7 o'clock in the morning, and then I don't get back home until 6:30, 7 o'clock at night. So that's a long day of wear when I wear it to work. The following 2 days I wore it, I was on vacation and I was home, so I wore it for like maybe a half a day the first day, and then perhaps maybe 8 to 9 hours the second day. It's been very hot here and it was quite hot on all 3 days that I wore the foundation. Now, the first day I wore it to work, it did break up around my nose. It looked very cakey around my nose area. By the time I got home, I don't know why that is. It didn't do that on the next 2 days that I wore it, but that first day, for some reason, it did. It was all caked up around here. So I don't know what happened with that. Maybe I was using a different primer. I'm not sure. I think the first time I used it, I used my regular smoothing primer, my Philosophy primer. I do use 2 different primers. I use my Sephora mattifying primer and my T-Zone. And the last 2 days that I wore it, the other 2 days I wore it, I wore my Fenty Beauty Soft Filter Primer, which is a mattifying primer, along with the Sephora mattifying primer in my T-Zone. And it seemed to work well with all of the primers. Actually, the second day I wore it, I actually did use the Tatcha Silk Canvas smoothing primer on top of my my first primer. So I've worn it with about 3 or 4 different primers. And it wears well. All 3 days it wore well for the majority of my face, my cheek area here. In the T-zone, however, where I get the oiliest the quickest, my oils did break down rather quickly. My oils did break through, I should say, rather quickly. I would say within the first 2 hours of wearing the foundation on each day, my T-zone got oily rather quickly. And I did have to blot more frequently. Again, it has been very hot here, so I've had to do that with my other foundation as well. But with my other foundations, I don't find that my T-zone gets as oily as quickly as it does with this foundation. Aside from that though, it does wear fairly well for long periods of time. I wore it from anywhere from 8 to like 10 or 12 hours. So the rest of my face, it wore pretty well. Now, I do have mixed feelings about this foundation. Definitely, by the time I get to work, I feel like I'm already oily in my T-zone, and my commute time to work is anywhere from an hour to an hour and a half. So I don't like that. I also have found that as I wear this foundation, it does look better in terms of it doesn't look as flat and matte. When I'm finished with my foundation and I put on powder and everything, even as matte as it is, even with powder, it looks pretty good, I think. After I'm done with everything, it looks fairly good. But I feel like as the day wears on, my texture gets more and more highlighted with this foundation. It's very odd. I feel like, especially the first day I wore it, I felt like I could see texture that I didn't even know I had on my face. I have a lot of acne scarring, a lot of pocks from acne. So I have a lot of like pock marks all over my face. So my skin is not smooth. And even with the Tatcha Silk Primer, Silk Canvas Primer, that smoothing primer, my Philosophy smoothing primer, as the day wore on, I just felt like you could see my texture more and more. It got more and more prominent and more highlighted as the day went on, and I really don't like that. I think the other problem that might be getting in the way of me loving this foundation is the fact that the color is not an exact match. I know it looks probably looks like it's a really good match on camera, and I'm able to make it work. I mean, I've wanted to work and people haven't looked at me like I just walked off a spaceship or anything. So I'm able to make it work, but I do feel like it still is maybe a tad, just a smidget too dark for me. The Burkina shade, I think might be a little better match. I don't know. I'm just so curious to see that I'm tempted to go ahead and buy it and see. So even with the cons, the things that I don't like about this foundation, I don't think it's a bad foundation. And the price makes me, like I said, it tempts me to want to go out and get it in the other shade and perhaps mix it with my current foundations. Today I'm wearing this foundation, but I have been wearing my Power Play, my Cover FX Power Play foundation. It's also a thick foundation, and I think the two of these might work well together. So I am tempted to go, so I don't dislike it enough. The cons aren't so bad that I haven't ruled out going to get it in the other shade and mixing it with my existing foundations. At $20, it's not a lot of money to spend to mix it with another foundation. So I'm really thinking about doing that. But yeah, I have to admit, after wearing it for the 3 days, I wasn't excited or eager to wear it again, especially by itself. So that's definitely says something. So in a nutshell, in a conclusion, would I recommend this foundation? Like, as I said, I don't think it's a bad foundation. For me, it has its pros and its cons. I think if you have a really good skin, and when I say good, I mean like smooth, you don't have any indentation, pock marks or anything like that, I think this foundation will look really nice on you. I think even if you do have blemishes and hyperpigmentation, that this foundation is full coverage enough to where it's really going to cancel that out. In terms of refining texture, I did not find that to be the case in my experience. I think if you have normal to oily skin, this will work for you. I think with normal skin, you might not even have to set it with powder. I think if you have dry skin, I don't know if you're going to like this, and if you do try it, I would suggest that you definitely use hydrating primers and hydrating skincare products with it to prep your face prior to using this foundation. And so yeah, I mean, I would say that I don't love the foundation. I don't love it, and I thought I was going to love it. I was expecting to love it. I was hoping to love it because I would love to find my everyday foundation for $20. Full coverage at that, I would love that. But in terms of a standalone foundation or replacing my other foundations with this one, no. Alright, so that is it. I hope that was helpful for you. Please let me know in the comments below if you've tried this foundation and what has been your experience with the foundation. If you liked this video, then please give it a like and consider subscribing, because I do reviews along with makeup tutorials, hauls, and swatches here on my channel every Saturday. I want to thank you for joining me today. I hope to see you again next week. Until then, bye-bye.